Today's video will be a little bit different. First things first. Welcome to CNN. I'm Kirk Kennedy, the underdog. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. But we try to expose them in a way that honors the Lord and not in a way that self-righteously just calls out people's sin. If you're of the Christian tradition such as I am, tomorrow's not promised to us, but the day of the Lord is, right? And because of that, we want to remember the future. We want to live in light of that day. Paul talked about this in Philippians 1, living in light of that day. And we're still on the road to 5K, trying to get to 5K as quick as we can. I've watched other channels blow up. We're trying to get our channel there. Stop playing. What are we doing? No, I'm just kidding about that. Not about getting there, but about the process in which it takes to get there. I understand that the content that I make is not going to usher me there quickly, because sometimes I say things that even believers don't want to hear. But today's video will be slightly different. This is less about a clever angle on a particular cultural topic or just trying to even an intense biblical angle on a topic. Today is a very surreal day. This is a little bit of a personal video today. Today is a very surreal day, so I apologize in advance for whatever rambling may come as a result of this. You can feel free to click off and not watch this if you want to. It won't hurt my feelings at all. But today is a weird day. So it's Friday. It's August 9th, and I was just reflecting this morning. I heard news from 3 different people that I'm directly connected to, and each of them affected me in different ways. One happy, one extremely sad, and one glad but reflective. And you probably have had days like this, but let me explain what I mean. So the first thing that made me happy was I found out today. Well, I knew this yesterday, but it was confirmed today. My buddy, who's worship leader at my church, we actually just finished or almost finished an album that we're doing together under the name JFK, which stands for Jonathan featuring Kennedy and Jesus for King. He's a worship leader, and there's a song on the album called Painful Faith. And it's the only song. He raps on this song. He's not a rapper at all, but he raps on the song, and he raps about how painful it has been for him and his wife, who I believe they've been married now 9 years, 8 or 9 years. On this song, he raps about how challenging it has been to not be able to have a child. And, you know, I got 3 boys, 16, 15, and my youngest just turned 13 this past Sunday. So I officially have 3 teenage boys. I've been traveling with them, just me and them, since July 4th in California. It's been an incredible time. Our time's wrapping up. It's been incredible. And we didn't struggle to have kids. I don't know that struggle. I've counseled and pastored people who have had that struggle, who have had to go the in vitro route, or had to go in different directions to have kids and do some things. And I'll be honest, my church is, a couple hundred people, but I would say for a church my size, there have been, at one point, I didn't know if it was the enemy or not, but there have been some struggles for a church my size. I was surprised at the level of struggle it was for some couples to conceive and have children. In the Old Testament, like that was like a big deal. Like it would say like God closed a woman's womb or God opened up their womb, or the reality of being able to conceive and have a child, especially for women in the Old Testament, was like a big deal. I mean, you'd see women like Hagar mocking Sarah and this idea where children and wanting children was such a connection to the blessing from God, but also to the identity of women in the Old Testament. And I've watched women in my church struggle to conceive, and couples, and for years try different things. And so my worship leader, my buddy JP, it was a struggle for him and his wife for a long time. And so on our album, on the JFK album, he did a song. He's a singer, but he rapped. He wrote his. I told him I don't want to write this song for you because it's your personal story, and I wanted to reflect what you feel. So he's not a rapper. So when you hear it, don't be like, "Oh, this isn't real." He's a worship leader, but he talked about how painful it has been to trust the Lord to conceive. And I know other people in my church who now have children, but who have struggled with this reality. And some women did not have, some don't have children. Well, I found out, I knew yesterday, but found out today, confirmed this morning, that they had a daughter yesterday. Um, she went in for a procedure, his wife, and I didn't hear from him. I was like, I'm not going to bother him. But today I texted and said, hey, how are you guys doing? And they sent me a picture of their daughter and said they're doing well and all of this stuff. And we're just obviously appreciative to the Lord. And I was just happy. I was happy because I know the struggle that they have had. And I've walked them with them through this, but I've also walked other couples. And because I didn't have a struggle to conceive, my wife and I didn't have a struggle to conceive. I know the struggle. I have, but I don't know that one. You know what I'm saying? Like, how there are people that you're involved in, you have fellowship with, right? You have fellowship with them, and they're going through things that you haven't experienced. So you can feel it. You can feel for them, but it's not your struggle. I don't know that struggle particularly, but I've watched people really, really struggle with that. And to see them having children now, and they get the text and to see the picture of this beautiful baby girl, it was incredible. I know they're going to be great parents. He's a good man. She's a good woman. They love the Lord. But like loving the Lord doesn't mean that like you're not going to struggle. And as I'm reading the Old Testament, let me just say this real quick, because many of you would probably be aware of this. But like, what's fascinating? This is like its own video. But I want to do a video called How God Works, or I definitely want to, and I may do this as a sermon in my church. But what I find fascinating, and this sort of rivals the modern day understanding of like prosperity and what I call the prosperous gospel. But like, so God told David through the prophet Samuel that he was going to be the next king. But then for years, I don't know exactly how many years, David was in fear of his life. Saul was trying to kill him. He was running with his men, hiding all over the place. On 2 occasions, Saul was right next to him, and he could have killed him, and he didn't, right? And there were times when David, he would get this ephod, and he would pray and ask God, like, hey, are they going to give me into the hands of Saul? And then and God would say yes. So God was communicating with David during that time and had promised David the most significant blessing. Like, it was clear. It wasn't one of them, I just sensed that I'm going to get it. It was the prophet Samuel told David, you're going to be the king. And David for years was running for his life before that happened, was afraid. It's fascinating that just because God promises you something doesn't mean that it's going to come in this uninhibited, no challenge way, just this blessing. This was one of the greatest blessings you could ever be bestowed upon by God for someone in the Old Testament. And David was running for the circumstances didn't match the blessing, is what I'm getting at. And it's interesting when you watch how God works, often the circumstances of blessing don't match the idea of blessing, right? Oh, David's going to be the next king. And you just imagine him as king. This dude's running for his life for years. He loses Jonathan, which was Saul's son. They made a pact together that one day Saul would be by David's side, but yet Jonathan would be by David's side. But then when Jonathan got killed, right? As part of his dad being killed in this war, he got killed. But this is how God works. And I think it's when you really trace that theme, what I'm talking about, through the Bible, I think it would really push back against this modern era, sort of the Michael Todd, God wants to unlock your blessing, but this has that just name it, claim it. Like this idea is not how God works. I'm saying all that to say because this would be the biblical way to describe what I would call a very strange and surreal day. Surreal is probably better because it has both good and bad elements to me. So the good, the happy element is that my buddy, my worship leader, has a child, and they've waited for a while. I can't wait for you to hear the JFK. It's called The Assassination. I can't wait for you to hear this album that'll drop in September. But to hear his song "Painful Faith," you'll really hear it in what he's saying and how he's describing what it was like to be praying and asking the Lord and really and being faithful to the Lord for the most part. And by I say for the most part, not because they weren't, but because none of us are so faithful that we deserve anything, right? So you can always find areas of sin in your life that you would think that doesn't warrant blessing. But they've been faithful believers, godly people, and the Lord just wasn't coming through in the way that they were hoping. But now he has a daughter. So I was really happy this morning to see the picture and get that because it's at least and my assumption is her health is fine, everything's fine. It's the end of a particular journey of struggle. And I think anyone can relate to this, but as a pastor, when you love people and walk people through things and they get to the end of the struggle of the journey of the struggle they're in, it's just a good thing, man. It's almost like back in the day, that movie about them black women waiting to exhale. It's almost like that vibe, right? So there was that. That was the happy news. The glad news was I talked to my brother this morning, and my mom was in. Some of you who are watching now or watching later know, a few weeks ago. As a matter of fact, we got to California July 4th. On July 5th, or that evening, July 4th, I found out my mom was sick and wasn't doing well. July 5th, I had in a conversation with her, convinced her to the go with the paramedics to let them take her. And then July 6th, she had a septic shock, and I thought she was going to die. And she was in ICU for weeks. I wrestled with going back home and me and my sons. And I felt like, apart from being able to see her physically, the only thing that I would be able to do was just wait. And that'll be the same thing we would be doing in California. So I prayed about it, talked to some folks, and I thought about, what would serve my children. My mom's a believer. I have a great relationship with her. So if she did pass away, I would have been sad that I wasn't there physically, but there wouldn't have been much else besides that because I understand Lord willing, I'll see her again. Our relationship was good. So I decided to stay, and I'm glad I did because I felt like my boys needed this time, and we've had a great time. But after 4 weeks, my mom started to improve, and she got transferred to a physical therapist facility, a rehab place. My brother this morning, he was heroically. My brother was a gangster, man. He was there a lot. He lives a couple hours away, but was going down a lot, just doing what you're supposed to do for your mom. And I'm proud of my brother, proud of him, and I'm glad that he was there because I wasn't there, and I would have come back in a heartbeat. But we felt like in this situation, I should stay in California. I had a commitment to preach 6 Sundays, so this Sunday coming up is my last Sunday preaching in California, and we thought it best to stay. But my brother told me this morning that my mom is being released from the physical therapy rehab facility she's in, and he's bringing her home tomorrow. And then we're just talking about the reality of, okay, mom's going to need some help. What's that look like? And so we spent about an hour this morning just talking through what we're aware of, what the needs are and things like that. And it was incredible. I was glad I was glad, but it was still like a wow, because I immediately just thought about wow, there was a point where I thought my mom was gonna die, and I've shared that on previous videos. So uh, I just thought, man, she's not gonna make it, and I trusted the Lord. I know that that's how God works sometimes. That I tell my kids all the time, like I don't presume because I'm a pastor. I told my church this on the last Sunday that I preached there on June 30th, that I don't presume that because I'm going on sabbatical that I'm coming back. And it wasn't because I got some premonition from the Lord that I was going to die. It's just that I don't arrogantly think that because I'm a pastor or because I'm a father, that like I'm just destined. The Lord's not going to allow some form of tragedy or some trauma to happen in my life. I mean, I honestly believe one of the greatest misconceptions in the world is that trauma is the exception and not the norm. And I think it's the other way around. I think trauma, I mean, even the crucifixion, Jesus chose trauma to bring us to our redemption. He could have chosen a different way to die, but he chose the most traumatic way to die at that time. He chose to, he was beaten brutally. That was incredible trauma. When you look at 2 Corinthians 11, all the stuff that Paul goes through, there's nothing about what Paul describes there that wouldn't be considered in modern day terms as traumatic. So I don't assume that because I'm a pastor or because I'm a dad that somehow the the Lord owes me like me dying in a way that doesn't challenge my children. I could have died on this trip. We could have died in a plane crash. I don't assume that. So I told my church that this could be my last Sunday. And I'm not back there yet. So it could have been. I'm not until I get up there to preach again. My last Sunday was June 30th. It could be the last time I preach there. I don't assume that. I'm not morbid and I have a dad. I just don't assume. And so when my mom was in ICU, I didn't assume that because she's my mom and because I'm Kurt Kennedy or because I'm a pastor, I don't assume stuff like, oh, the Lord's just going to protect her. I just think that's dangerous. I mean, we look at people like David and Paul and others in the Bible. I think those are dangerous assumptions to assume that because you love God or are a believer, that somehow the circumstances in your life will, yeah, God works together for the good of those who love him, but he determines what good is, not us. So I don't presume. So when I heard the news this morning that my mom was going home tomorrow, I was glad, but it also reminded me of just the struggle of not knowing what was going to happen. So I was definitely glad. But now there's, a lot of work to be done when I get back and stuff like that. And when I get back, it's all hands on deck. That's my mom. I'm going to do whatever she needs and go see her as often as I need to be there. So that was that. So it was a happy day because my worship leader, my buddy, he has a child and he's been waiting, him and his wife, for years for this moment. It was a glad day because my mom's going home, and it was happy, but the reason why I'm choosing the word glad rather than happy, because of the next thing I'm about to say, and also because of the process of wow, it was crazy, and but it's more connected to what I'm about to say now. What makes this day kind of surreal and somewhat even weird is that my one of my closest friends, one of my best friends, my buddy who's the lead pastor of the church in San Francisco. We've been friends for 17 years. He's flown me out to San Francisco. I was his first guest preacher in 2009. And I think every year since then, I've come to San Francisco at least once, sometimes twice. And on two occasions in 2018 and this year, I've stayed for weeks, a month plus to preach in his absence because he's on sabbatical for the summer. Um, my buddy who brought me out, his mom passed away last night. And when I got out here and I let him know my mom was in the ICU at that time, his mom wasn't sick. Or at least he didn't say that. He was worried about me. Listen, if you need to go back and so forth. And I said, well, let me think about it. I'll let you know. And then we felt like eventually, no, we're gonna trust the Lord. And I'm glad we did, because if we would have went home, It would have been just waiting, the same stuff we were doing. I would have seen her, but it just would have been a waiting game. But he didn't know that. But then at some point, his mom got sick. Now, it wasn't brand new to them, but it was, it's still your mom though, right? And so he, has been traveling and then ended some of his travel to be with his family, his dad and, his other family. But he texted me this morning, and said that she passed away last night. Now, this is one of my best friends. So this isn't just someone I know about, like some random member of my church that, you're supposed to love, even if you don't know them that well. This is one of my best friends. I mean, when I die, he's one of the few people that I will want to speak at my funeral because of our friendship. And when his mom first got sick, at the time, my mom wasn't out of the woods. So I could relate to him because I was going through the identical same thing that he was. And so as my mom improved, his mom declined, and to the point where she passed away last night. And it's just such a surreal thing for me because I'm sad because this is my dude, and that's his mom. He's a strong guy. He'll take it to the chin, I'm sure. And he'll be emotional when he needs to be, and I'll be here for him at any moment. And I can relate to him. It's a very rare thing when what someone is going through, you can relate because you're also going through it. Like, there was a moment for weeks on this trip that I was enjoying myself, but in the front of my mind was like, I may get the news that my mom is gone, and I have to deal with that and prepare my sons for the possibility of that. So when his mom got sick, we were both sort of like, man, like in this place. But we respected each other. I didn't talk to him all the time. He was doing his thing. I was doing my thing. We would talk through text. And then I saw him a couple times, swung by his place while he was just in between traveling, and we'd rap and talk and all that stuff and hang out a little bit. But when he said his mom passed away, obviously it was somewhat expected, but it was still the reality. And I was just sad. I feel sad because that's my dude. And I felt sad because I know what he was going through. But I was glad he got to see his mom and go spend days with her before she went home to be with the Lord. But it was kind of like this weird intersection of, in one day, a child comes into the world and begins their life. A woman leaves the world and ends hers. And a woman is allowed to prolong her life. And this is all three different people that I care about and love deeply. And I'm in this weird place of like, I'm happy for my worship leader, my buddy, JP. I'm extremely sad for my buddy, Roscoe. And I'm glad that my mom is going home tomorrow. But I can't fully celebrate my mom because one of my best friends just is experiencing one of the greatest trials of his life. So it's a surreal day. It's really weird, like, to see the introduction of life, the end of life, and the continuation of life in one swoop like this. I mean, it happens all the time, but I mean, like, when you're connected to like, I'm the intersection of all three of these narratives. They all are connected to me in some way, shape, or form. So it's a surreal day. I mean, I'll go out and, do some stuff with my boys, and we're still in San Francisco. We're winding down our time, but it really is an interesting. Like, I'm encouraged about my mom, and I'm grateful. I think I'm more grateful than I am happy. I'm grateful because my buddy, I'm sure I prayed for his mom. I'm sure he prayed for his mom, and others were praying for her, and it wasn't the Lord's will. but it was that my mom's life got extended. And then my buddy, he's about to walk through the beginning of life as a dad, and his wife as a mom, and all that comes with that. It's a rare. It's almost like when we had the eclipse, like the galaxy, the stars and the moons and everything had to be aligned a certain way for that solar eclipse to happen. I'm not saying it like this. But I'm saying like the way that all this lined up to all hit me today on August 9th. It's like, wow, it's just really fascinating to see to have this range of emotion and not know what to do with it. Like I just got to roll with it. But it's kind of like it's sunny outside in California, but it's like partly cloudy in my heart because I'm excited for my buddy. I'm sad for my buddy. I'm glad and relieved about my mom. But in all these things, like life goes on. And then if we're being honest, one day I'm going to be the one that transitions and my kids are going to have to process their dad is gone and stuff like that. So it's really interesting, like to have a day like this. It makes you reflect on things differently than you would probably reflect on. So I'm not saying this in any way I don't, I'm not trying to get sympathy. I'm just being honest with you. This is just, I'm thinking out loud. I'm processing this as I'm talking to you, making this video, because we're going to go out and run around. And because the time frame is 3 hours back, I wanted to make a video today, but we might be running around by the time I get back. It might be too late for those who follow me on the East Coast to watch a video. So I might do another video today on what I was intentionally going to talk about. But this is what I've been thinking about all morning. And so I just thought, because this is how God works. And there are, and there are times when you and I will experience a range of circumstances that cause us to both gratitude, to both be glad, sad, excited. There's just a range of things that are there. So one, for those of you who follow me and who are Kirk Kennedy, you listen to me, and we're praying. Thank you for that for my mom. I really so appreciate you, and I'm grateful. And I've expressed that in previous videos. Thank you for all the super chats that you guys have given. Some of you have given money directly through Venmo and Cash App. Thank you. That's just been like, you guys, like, doing these videos is somewhat more work than I think people realize, because you got to find content you want to talk about. You got to find the time when you want to do it. And you can often get no benefit from it apart from a few people watching. And because I lost a little momentum because I didn't stream for a while over here, I could easily have 100+ people watching, and I don't have those, because I'm sure when I get back home, maybe it'll build back up. But there's just a difference. It's been a little bit hectic to stream out here, so I lost a little momentum with the algorithm. And when I was supposed to actually be in San Diego this week, I was going to stream with Rules on it. He actually texted me this morning, like, "Hey, you guys down here?" And I was like, "Nah, we ain't make it down because, man, we're just tired. We just been doing a lot of stuff." So I would have been back there with him today, probably streaming live with him. But yeah, it's a surreal day for me. And I don't really have these kinds of days a lot. I'm really I just grind out. I'm an X Street dude, and so I can handle a lot, and I can handle a lot of like wild stuff. But today it's just like, wow, this is like, and there are other things that, coming off of a year of like intense spiritual warfare or 2 years of intense spiritual warfare in my church, that all of this is somewhat connected to, which wouldn't be appropriate for me to go into on YouTube, particularly in the way that I'm thinking. But it's definitely different. So yeah, if the Lord reminds you, pray for your boy. I'm not like walking around kicking rocks or nothing, but yeah, I'm definitely sad for my bro. I'm happy for my bro, and I'm glad that my mom is going home. There's a lot of work that needs to be done now to help her transition back home and stuff like that. But but I'll reach out. I'll ask some people from my church. My church is heroic. They're servants. They love the Lord, and I'm sure there will be nothing to get 5 people to go over there and help her unpack some of the box. She just moved back into her condo that she owns. So it's nothing to ask some people to help unpack things and get that unpacked for her so that she can be good. I think that would be beneficial to help her get that stuff done. Um, but yeah, I don't. Yeah, nothing amazing, nothing eye opening. Just wow, just the intersection of all these three. It's like a movie. It's like these three different stories that have these three different endings, and then your emotions are tugged because each one means something to you. It's really fascinating to see how God works. It just when you if you know this is a different video, but I think so much of our lack of understanding how God works is because of theology rather than just Bible reading. And I love theology, don't get me wrong, but theology is usually someone's interpretation of the Bible or explaining like biblical concepts and break and showing you all the the ways that the Bible talks about these things. But sometimes if you just read just the Bible and read what just happens in the Bible, you don't have any theologian, some student who understood. Just forget about the grammar of Hebrew and Greek and all of that. But you just read the English translation of your Bible, you'll learn about how God works in ways that are unique, that are not that don't need someone to try to tell you, oh, this is how you need to read it. I just think if you just read the scriptures, I'm not saying don't read theology or listen to teachers. No, but I just think it's beneficial for believers to just read the word by itself. There was a time when there weren't many books on theology, and you just had to read the Bible and understand who God is as whatever, you know, translation you were reading, whatever way you were understanding that presented itself. I just think it's beneficial. I do not think God works in the way a lot of the modern American, and it's not even American because in Africa they do this too. I just don't believe in the modern prosperous prosperity stuff and the way, even just the way God blesses and does things. I think we tend to think that all God's blessings come with a degree of ease and comfort until we receive it, or when or how we receive it. And I just think like, nah, fam. Or we think that faith is somehow like this flawless, you know, amazing thing. That's like, nah. When you read like some of the narratives of the people who were in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11, like you just think like, man, their lives were insane, and yet they demonstrated. So I just think in our modern era, as Americans, if you're in America, I think many of us just have a very American view of of Christianity, a very sort of, return on investment, sort of corporate America view. Like, well, if I do this, this will happen. And it's like, no, no, sometimes God's not going to answer a prayer for someone's salvation or someone's life being prolonged that matters to you, that's important. Sometimes he's going to say, no, he's not answering the prayer of your desire for your children or or for children or whatever that is. Sometimes it's just not. Or it's you some people are not going to get married. Some people are not going to have good marriages. Some people are going to not have the career of their life. Some people are going to work really hard and still not achieve the things that they want. And it's not because something's wrong with God. It's because the way God works, all those circumstances shape us and they kind of separate, for lack of a better phrase, the boys from the men of faith, the women from the girls, the people who know how to trust the Lord despite their circumstances, or the people who only trust the Lord when their circumstances fit their view of what they deserve. And I think if I were to say if I were to simplify Christianity in the most oversimplified way, I would say that a lot of Christianity circumstances will reveal if you trust the character of God for who he is, or you trust the character of God for what he gives. And I think the yeses and nos, the sufferings of this life are going to expose what do you really believe about God. And so as I'm in this place of one of my best friends, his mom passed. My mom is being released from physical therapy rehab center. And my buddy has finally a child, a daughter. It's a crazy, happy, sad, glad moment that I just thought I'd share with you guys. So appreciate you. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you on the next stream.